There we go. Well, welcome everyone to our author series. Tonight we have a special event on a Tuesday night rather than a Thursday night. And as many of you may not know, Tuesday is officially new release day in the book industry. So that's why we're having this event tonight, because it is the official launch day of We Are the Brennans by Tracey Lange. So again, my name is Julie. I'm the events manager at Roundabout Books. We are really excited to be able to continue these Zoom events right now while things are still in a state of flux, but we are hoping to start offering in-person events in September. So please do keep up on our events calendar. We will also be offering as many of those events as possible as a live stream, either via Zoom or YouTube. So again, if you're not able to make it into the store, and we do understand, we would still love to see you at those events. So please check out our event calendar. Our author tonight went into the store today and signed some copies. So if you haven't picked up your copy of We Are the Brennans, please stop by for a signed one. So tonight is really fun because we're doing an in conversation. So our interviewer is Ellen Santasiero, who is an instructor at OSU Cascades. She is also an essayist, writes memoirs, and has articles have appeared in Northwest Review, The Sun, Oregon Humanities, High Desert Journal, and most recently, she is the co-editor of Placed, an Encyclopedia of Central Oregon, which we also have at the store. So please stop by and grab a copy. Our guest of honor, however, is Tracey Lange, born in the Bronx and raised in Manhattan. Tracey comes from a large Irish family, which if you're reading the book would make lots of sense, with a few secrets of its own. She headed west and graduated from the University of New Mexico before owning and operating a behavioral healthcare company with her husband. While writing We Are the Brennans, she completed the Stanford University online novel writing program and currently lives here with us in Bend, Oregon. So I am so excited to hear from both of you because I have been reading the book, so I'm excited for the background of it. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the two of you. Tracey, Ellen, let's hear what we have going on with We Are the Brennans, and then we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So I turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Julie, so much. And thank you to Roundabout Books for doing this event and events like it. It is a pleasure and a joy for me to be part of this and to be able to be the first one to ask questions of the authors. So it's nice to meet you, Tracey. And I'm excited that you live here in our midst. And so I have several questions. I have about 8 or so. Okay. And I'm sure that they will spawn other questions. But I will just start with, how are you feeling right now? Your first book is being published.
It's been such an exciting day. It really has. So many messages, so much support. I love stopping in at Roundabout today and some other places in town. And it's super, it's a little surreal. But yeah, it's been a long time coming. So very, very exciting.
Yeah, great. How long?
Well, I guess, I bought the book about a year and a few months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And I knew that would kind of be a long runway, but all of a sudden it's just kind of here, so it's super exciting.
And when did you start writing the book?
I started the book about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. Mm-hmm. I all told, I'd say it took about 2 years, including kind of when I would take a little time away and then come back to it. But yeah, I started it right about 3 years ago, I would say.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I finished the book last week and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Great. And one of the things that I enjoyed the most, or the thing that I enjoyed the most, was on page 195, I realized, oh my God, this is retelling The Sound and the Fury in part. I recognized Faulkner.
Oh, wow.
Faulkner's story, Faulkner's the Compson family in the Brennan family.
Gotcha.
And I'm curious to know what made you decide to kind of loosely structure your story on that story.
I'll be honest, now that you mention it, I see it, but I can't say that really factored into my approach to the story. I didn't go in knowing exactly how I was going to do it. And I can't say it's really based on any other story in particular, but of course, you know, there's that genre that I've been reading forever. But that's an interesting point. I actually didn't think of that myself, and didn't base it on that in particular.
Yeah, all right. That's interesting to hear. When I saw, you know, 3 brothers, 1 sister, and one of the brothers is developmentally disabled, and much of the honor of the family rides on Sunday, and you know, she was ashamed of what happened to her, and
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
And mother just not being able to deal with Shane, the disabled son, is exactly like Mrs. Compson in the Sound of the Fury. But that being said, you know, that doesn't sound like that was a focus or anything for you. So let's move on to what was the inspiration for that family? What was your process like in creating that family?
Well, I've always been so fascinated by family. So much of what I read about and what I write about is family. So I knew I was going to be headed in that direction. And certainly a lot of it was sort of inspired by my own experience growing up in a big Irish Catholic family. My immediate family was fairly small. It was just, I only have 1 brother, but we were surrounded. We have 17 aunts and uncles and 50 some first cousins. And so we were always surrounded, kind of living in that world. So I was definitely kind of inspired by that. And I guess I wanted to dig into that a little bit, although the characters and the specific events are not based on me or anyone in my family. But I certainly come from that world. And it really started with the idea of someone coming back into the family fold after being gone for a number of years, and just wanting to explore the impact of that, and you know, why she left, why she's coming back, and how's that going to impact everybody else in the family. So that's kind of where it started, and the characters came right on the heels of that.
Mm-hmm. And had that idea been rolling around for a while for you? That idea of somebody coming back into the fold after several years, had you, you know, did you take notes about that, or, you know, hear about it, or read about it somewhere?
You know, and this has happened since. I just kind of get the idea, and then I sit with it for a while, and it starts to flesh out a little bit, and then I nail some characters down. And so I can't say that it was sat with me for years, or it was just this burning story that I'd been waiting all my life to tell. But once I got hold of it, I definitely knew I wanted to run with it and do as much as I could with it. It was definitely very close to my heart. So, yeah.
And so you had that idea, and you said at the beginning that you like to read family stories. You like those kinds of stories. Were there literary inspirations, or about, you know, stories about families that also kind of inspired you, or movies, or anything like that?
So much of what I've read, you know, it has definitely played into it. I always talk about, I know this much is true, by Wally Lamb, one of my favorite all time. I read it a long time ago. And it just kind of rocked me, and fascinating family and characters. And I mean, all along the way, some Joyce Carol Oates books, of course, J. Courtney Sullivan, you know, and I'll read anything about family, whether it's a family we're born into or the family that, you know, we create along the way. But I can't say one specific person or author or book that really inspired it, but certainly all of that played into it. I find that also fascinating.
Mhm. Yeah. So there's one thing that I'm afraid of is that I'm gonna give away the ending. So
Mm,
I have to keep checking myself. So I'll try to
right.
ask questions that don't reveal what happens. But I'll say in general, there's a particular level of trauma that various characters suffer in the book.
Mhm.
And I was curious as I was reading to know, how did you decide, or was it an overt decision to decide on a particular level of trauma for the characters? And I'm thinking of Sunday in particular, when it is revealed about halfway through the novel what
Mhm.
that trauma was. I was expecting it to be something different than what actually happened.
Mhm.
So anyway, just wondered about that. Was that a conscious decision? And then also throughout the book, there were hints at trauma that the father had gone through, maybe some acts that he committed, but they were never revealed. So anyway, just wondering your thoughts about that.
Well, certainly it was a decision because I knew that I had to think about what would possibly have driven Sunday away from this family that she was so important to, and vice versa, and of course her fiance at the time. Um, and so that took a lot of thought about what would cause that, what would bring that level of shame where she felt like she had to hide it and ultimately leave. Um, and to me, that often is a generational thing, that kind of keeping secrets, and of course that's in this family, that's what's going on. And so it would make sense that her dad had some things in his past that he was trying to hide, and whether it's to protect them as he views it, or again cover any of his own shame. But I think that sort of thing bleeds into the next generation, and so that's where you have Sunday and her brothers to some degree also hiding their mistakes and flaws, and as close as this family is, they still feel that need to hide those things from each other and keep secrets. So I thought that was a pretty, almost a contradiction there, and kind of a fascinating thing to dive into.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you didn't name what the father did in the past, in Ireland, for example, regarding the troubles. I thought that was a good move because it left a lot to my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't
Good.
really need to say. You needed to kind of be with this person who's now in America and has started this family and his business, etc. Um, I was talking to somebody about the book this morning, and I said one thing I liked was that I felt like you had an equal measure um, of love and affection and bonding with the family, with the siblings and the father, um, with also an equal measure of dysfunction. So,
Yeah.
you know, it I loved that, that you really drew out and detailed how, the downside of such a close family,
Thank
and
you.
the bonds that they had, the bonds unexamined.
Mm-hmm.
There are pitfalls, and I love that those were appeared in the book in full force, and particularly Vivian's coming out and naming, kind of just telling the truth about some things that had gone on in that family that were ongoing, the ongoing dynamic with the
Sure.
family. Um, I thought that was effective and very, very real, very recognizable. And can you talk about that? You're, developing that. Like, did you feel like you were going to err on the side in the beginning of making them, you know, really positive or really negative? Or were you always sort of like, yeah, I can show the dark and the light about this crew?
Well, that was my goal, for sure, was to get at, you know, this, they're so loyal to each other. They would do anything for each other, but yet there's this shame that just is kind of festering in the whole family and has been for generations. So it's nice to hear that, because that was a balance to try to show how close they were and how tight knit they were, but yet there's still this dysfunction going on between all of them. And I think, you know, that ultimately, I think that's why I went with so many points of view, which was a little scary at first. But it was such a great way to get into all of those perspectives and deal with those secrets that that the reader could know about in some cases, but other characters didn't know. And it was a great way to, I think, to see how it impacted each member of the family and people outside the family as well. That's why it was really a joy to bring Vivian's chapter in, because she had such a unique perspective. She's known the family, she's been aware of them always, but she's definitely on the outside. And so I just thought that would be really interesting to present her view of the whole situation. And then of course she's got missing pieces to the puzzle too. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated her character. You know, in the early chapters, my hackles went up when it was, you know, I forget whose point of view it was, but when, you know, she was somehow being disparaged for the way she dressed and, you know, particular choices that she made. And my hackles went up. And then later on, this character, you know, not to give too much away, but this character develops. And you do reveal that through the point of view shifts. You know, when we get to her point of view, she fills out and we see, you know, more facets of her, and she has a dignity in her own right, and she grows as a character and takes a stand. She acts, you know, she does those two acts, which I won't say, you know,
right.
Decision. She said, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. And she does it and stands up. And
there's much more to her than originally.
Yes.
Yes.
I admired the way you handled that character and gave her a dignity that at the beginning she didn't have, because we were hearing about her through other people's filters.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. That was important to me for sure. She has her own story and her own struggles and why she does the things she does. So that's really nice to hear. Yeah.
And a very, very real character. You know, I was like, oh yeah, you know, I know Vivian's.
Yeah. And she's doing the best she can too. Yeah.
And I am she's living beyond the book for me, because I'm not going to say it, but I'm like, I think that she should, get together with a particular person. And you know what I mean? I'm not going to say.
Oh, that's interesting.
Seems like they have some things in common, you know, anyway.
We want her to have a happy ending, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So on that note, I very much, when I finished it, felt like, oh, there's got to be a sequel to this. And not just because of my thoughts about Vivian and that other character. It just seemed to me like it was written so that, you know, the door would be open for a sequel, particularly, you know, I mean, with what happens with Sunday and Kale at the end, and your thoughts about that.
Honestly, I never even thought about a sequel until very recently, when people have reached out and asked that question. But it was never part of my plan when I wrote the book or presented it to my agent in Celadon. And there was never, and it's nothing I've ever talked with anybody about. But many people, you're certainly not alone. So many people have asked that question. So I guess I don't close the door on anything at this point, but it's certainly nothing that I've gone anywhere with, and it's kind of a new, it never came into my head before people started asking. Yeah.
So interesting. I was dreaming up scenarios about the next generation.
Right.
Already.
Yeah, I guess I felt like I took this family through this particular arc, and story. And so it, for me, where it ended, it made sense, but I certainly understand. And like I say, many people have asked me that question.
Yeah. Well,
recently. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't think about a sequel. Have you thought about it being made into a film?
I mean, who wouldn't want that? That would be amazing to actually see these characters that, live here and always will to some degree. To see that actually on a screen would be amazing. And of course, I think there's all kinds of stories there, and it could go on and on.
Oh my God, it was so cinematic.
Thank you.
So cinematic. I mean, the whole time I was going, I can see this on the screen.
It could be fun. I agree with you. It could be kind of a nice, juicy, story or series or something. But yeah, that would be amazing. It would be kind of, another dream to see your characters brought to life like that. So
when you were writing it, it doesn't sound like you were thinking about, it sounds like you were just being a good writer, doing your due diligence as a writer and making it vivid, making the character vivid and live on and off the page. There's one character, the character of Shane. I thought you drew him particularly well.
Thank you.
He is just clear as a bell. Just the way you present him. I just felt like I could see him so clearly, and his dialogue just signaled the things that I think you wanted to signal about his developmental disability. And
good. That's great to hear. Thank you.
His purity, his innocence just comes right through in his dialogue and his movements and his reactions to other people. I thought that was just brilliant, the way you drew him in particular.
Thank you. And he was, in my mind, he's one of the reasons this family's been able to kind of stick together despite all their dysfunction for so long, because they're so committed to him, and they always have been. And he's the only one in the family that's not harboring dark secrets or hiding something. And so he's kind of, I don't know, he's sort of an anchor for them of sorts. So he was, I loved having him as part of this family. He was there from the beginning. And so it's great to hear you say those things about him, really.
Yeah. I loved to have, whenever he'd show up, I was always pleased.
Yeah. He was wise too. He had some, they wouldn't listen sometimes, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. Let's see. So, what do you in particular want readers or potential readers to know about We Are the Brennans?
Boy, I guess just that as I said, it's about this very loving, I mean, someone said, and I'm not going to be able to remember who it was, that it only takes two members in a family to make it dysfunctional. Like every family has its, issues and complications, and this one has a lot, granted, but I think ultimately the idea is looking at trying to work together to face the hard things rather than hide them from each other. and which is kind of what this family's been doing for, again, generations, really. And so this is an opportunity for them to try to face the hard stuff together. And I think within that comes a lot of forgiveness and redemption as well. So I guess that's, it's ultimately a hopeful message that I'm going for there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know who said it. Somebody, maybe John Gardner, the fiction writer, he said all stories end with either a wedding or a funeral.
Right.
It sounds like you're on the wedding side of things.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah.
The hopeful side.
Yeah, it's certainly not tied up nicely, but yes, hopeful for sure.
Yeah. Let's see what else I have here.
Well, I actually have a couple of questions,
Yeah.
Ellen, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So I was reading this on my phone because I have the digital advanced reader copy, and I am super guilty of sometimes I'll start a page and then I'll somehow go to the next page without reading the in between. And because it was just on the one screen, it was really easy to just be like, the reading was so much more linear. But I wanted to ask you a couple things. First, and I don't think this is giving anything away because it happened so quickly. When Sunday has her accident, her, in case of emergency, is her oldest brother. But she had just recently gotten an email from her next youngest brother. And later in the story, Denny does say, like, why was I your in case of emergency? And that I want to know the answer from you. Why is it Denny and not Jackie?
Although she kept a little more in touch with Jackie when she was gone, really for so long, she and Denny were such a team. I had them pretty close in age and they had very different strengths. And so with the various issues that this family was dealing with when they were growing up, in my mind, they were just a balanced team. They sort of balanced each other. And so when she's away from home, although she's not really keeping in contact, in my mind, if things were to go south, Denny, I thought, would be the one that she would want them to call and step in and help her out or make decisions or whatever needed to happen. So as close as she is with Jackie, and they have their own special connection, I just think she and Denny were such a team for so long that's kind of would be her go-to person.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And then so your comment, Ellen, about the chapters being from different characters is one of the first things that popped out to me. And I'm trying to talk more about books on social media, including TikTok. And so since it was New Release Tuesday, I put up the cover of your book and was like, every chapter is different characters. And there are so many times that goes so wrong, that you either get a character where you're like, I don't like this person, so I don't really want to listen to them anymore, or
sure,
other things. But I really loved that every chapter, the last line of the previous one is the first line, but it's from that new person's point of view. And I was just like, there's no, you're in the same scene at the same time. And and like Ellen is saying, I could picture it. I could picture the bar, I could picture the big family table. And maybe I was picturing the family table from like Blue Bloods or some other very Irish Catholic, we've seen. But there was just something that I feel like was so new about having that transition. Was that something you did right away, or did that maybe come out in the editing process?
Actually, that was there from the beginning, first draft. And I wasn't sure if it would stick, because there are certain limitations that come with that. And there were a couple transitions that I really had to think about and figure out, especially that first one when she's in LA and, Danny's in New York. But it was there from the beginning. And I think, I didn't know if it would stick, but I think it almost helped give me a structure of sorts when I realized that there were going to be so many characters. And one of the risks with that is getting too loose or distracted or confusing. But that seemed like a nice way to keep it pretty tight and focused. And each character has their own story going on, but they all sort of revolve around each other. So in the end, I felt like it worked pretty well. And I stuck with it, and I figured in later stages, if it didn't work, they'd let me know. But yeah, that was there from the beginning, really. And I think it was my way of helping myself just make those transitions and keep it pretty tight.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Julie. It worked.
Yeah. And my last real question is kind of about just how many Irish families there really are around this circle. So we know that Cale's parents, came over. We find out another character that is connected to the dad. And we have the illusion that the dad was involved with the IRA and the troubles. Was that, or I don't know how to phrase this, because obviously, I was really young when that happened. So I don't remember a lot of stuff, but like, did more people come over to New York and just this area in general that maybe weren't involved with the IRA, but like still had to leave because of it? Because that's kind of what I was getting from these families, is they just had to get out of there.
Well, some people left for that reason, and this is in New York, and and this was a while ago, but when I grew up, there were just so many pockets of Irish and Irish Americans, Irish that had come over and started families all over the city, particularly the Bronx and up in Westchester, and but they all left for so many different reasons. Sometimes they were leaving troubles behind. Sometimes it was just opportunity. That's why my dad came over from Ireland, was an opportunity to do something. He ended up in the construction business too. Actually, there's little bits of his story that I got to kind of weave into Mickey's background. But so I think often people came over looking for work, for better paying work. And we had people, relatives and friends that would come from Ireland and stay with us certain times of the year to work and make money and then go back. So many different things brought people over, I think. And sometimes they stayed, sometimes they went back. But yeah, my dad came and stayed, and I just grew up around families that did that, did a lot of that.
Well, and I also found it really kind of, I don't want to use the word cute, but there was something about it when Sunday and her cousin are out having a drink, and this is a very pivotal story, but they have other people where they're like, listen to his accent, and it was almost like even they, having grown up with it, still kind of romanticized Irish accent, of kind of like, he grew up here and went to high school here, but he still has that left over from either growing up there or his parents or whatever, and they were kind of like, oh, listen for it. Like, I thought that was really interesting to still have them be, or at least her cousin, kind of enamored of that Irish brogue, even having grown up with it.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm sure that came directly from my own experience. I was born and raised in New York, but I grew up around so many Irish people, so I have such a love for that accent. And I could be in a busy place, but if I hear it, I want to go talk to that person. And so I think that's very real, and I'm sure that's where it came from. My own experience. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think it would be a good time to open it up for questions from our audience. If you're not familiar with Zoom, there's a couple different ways to ask a question. You can type it into the chat box, or you can use the raise hand function and I can unmute you. Or if you have video, you can literally just wave at me and I can do that too. But I would love to hear everyone's questions for Tracey. And again, I know this is hard because the book did technically just come out today, so people might not have questions about the characters yet, but if anyone has any just for Tracey in general, let's see what people want to talk about. I know this is the quintessential answer or question, sorry, for all authors, you know, are you working on something new?
I am. I definitely am. I'm kind of far into it. I still got a ways to go. And I guess what I would say about it at this point is it's similar in the sense that it's a kind of another messy family with all sorts of dysfunction going on, but very different characters, very different situation. And it kind of explores a little bit more of the idea of, I guess, is trying to overcome your family history when you come out of there with a lot of burdens. So, so there's some of the same vein there, but that's where it is right now anyway. We'll see what happens.
It's a pretty rich subject. I mean, like you were saying, there's the family you're born into and the family that you make.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us are, you know, have both of those, thankfully. And I know living in Portland for as long as I did, I definitely made a little family out of, you know, friends that were up there. So Heather asked a question into the chat. What was your favorite part of your first pub day of today as your first book baby being born?
Oh gosh. It was super fun visiting the bookstores in town and getting to actually see the book in the store. You know, that was awesome. But I've had so many great messages and flowers and even on Instagram, such a supportive community. It's hard to pick one favorite part, honestly. But it's just been a terribly exciting day all the way around.
That's so good to hear too, especially with the changes that COVID has brought and not, you know, a big, huge party like we would like to do. Bridget asks, what brought you to Bend?
We came to Bend because we lived, I'm so sorry. German Shepherd in the background. We were living in Idaho before this, North Idaho, which was gorgeous, but very, very small. And so we were looking for a little bit more going on, a little bit more. There's one school where we came from. And so we just wanted some more options for our kiddos. And so we've been in Bend 7 years now, and we love it.
That's excellent. Oh, Mandy got her book a little early. I got my book from Book of the Month and finished it in one day.
Wow.
So awesome to hear. Mandy, don't forget to go and, you know, review it on all the sites, because that really helps authors and other people find the books too. So Goodreads and that kind of stuff. I love hearing.
Thank you, Mandy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you heard it from advanced reviewers, but is there still a sense of nervousness as your first book is really out in the world?
Sure. I mean, it's been great to get so much support, but it's still your baby at the end of the day. And, you know, and it's so subjective, and it won't be everybody's cup of tea, to use an Irish expression. And I get that. But it's a little nerve-wracking, something that, you know, I would sit in my office for hours on end and hope for this. But to actually get to the point where you put out in the world, it's a little scary, but I just feel like I have so much support behind me that it'll be okay, but it is a little stressful.
So how quickly, if you don't mind my asking, was the book picked up? Did you shop it to very many agents, or was it a pretty quick process?
Well, I was fortunate to meet my agent at a conference, and I guess about a year and a half or a little more ago, and she was fabulous, and we just had a great conversation. And so I sent it to her, and she really did have such great ideas and notes and helped me take it to the next level for sure. And then after a few months, we felt like it was ready to go out to editors, and I was so fortunate that Deb Futter at Celadon picked it up, and I could not be with a better team for sure. So it's that part went, I guess, relatively quickly in the sense that we didn't have to go out again and again, which was really nice.
Yeah.
But then of course it took a while that was again, I think a year and a half ago, or near enough, maybe a little bit less. So it's been a long time. This day has been a long time coming.
For sure. Sharon had a comment. She says, I have seen so much press over the book and had no idea you were local until I saw Roundabout's monthly newsletter. Can't wait to read it. And I think that's actually kind of what happened with us reaching out to you. Was I either saw it on Edelweiss, which for those of you who don't know is an internal book publishing industry website that we use to order books and find out about events, and I get free books through it because that's really fun. And somehow we knew that you were local, and I was like, oh my gosh. And just in the last like 48 hours, it has been picked as a bookseller pick on Libro FM for audiobooks. So I want to tell you if you didn't know that. So those of you who are on the chat with us right now, if you're not familiar with Libro.fm for your audiobooks, please consider them. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks, but Libro gives a portion of their sales to independent bookstores. So you can actually go in there and pick Roundabout as your bookstore, and Libro gives us the credit for the sale. And so I thought that was really fun. Like I'm just scrolling through, getting some audiobooks for myself, and it pops up and I was like, oh my gosh, and our event is tomorrow.
Well, and Barry Krynick, it does the narration, and she was just amazing. Her accents she was excellent. So that's great. That's really great to hear.
Yeah, I love audiobooks driving back and forth between Bend and Portland. You go you go through a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah.
So if anyone else has questions or comments, please do feel free to type them in the chat. But there is one final thing that I wanted to ask of you and Ellen both. And this is kind of, I do this last minute just to see what you say. Give me 2 book recommendations of something you've recently read or think everyone should read. And Ellen, I'll pick you first.
Oh.
Unless Tracey, you have one right off the top of your head. Besides We Are the Brennans, what should people be reading right now?
Oh my gosh, I love memoir. I would say Heavy by Keane Lehman.
Okay.
That I've read in the past while and just absolutely loved it. And then I also really loved recently Big Magic, which Elizabeth Gilbert, which came out a few years ago, several years ago.
Yeah. Tracey, do you have 2 off the top of your head?
I do. In fact, I'll hold them up because I happen to be sitting next to my shelves here. They've been around for a little bit, but they're such fantastic books. So I think they're worth mentioning. One is All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood, which is very much about the family that you create as opposed to the one you're born into. And then another one is A Complicated Kindness by Miriam Toews. Another great family book, largely centered on a father-daughter relationship, but 2 books that will just stay with me for a really, really long time.
What's the second one called?
A Complicated Kindness.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we did have one more question in the chat. Sharon is wondering about the audiobook. How did you select the narrator for the audio? Do you interview different candidates or does your publisher pick them for you?
Well, Celadon found a couple possibilities, and they sent me little sample recordings, and I immediately just felt like, again, Barry Krynick did an amazing job, and they were of the same mind. Celadon, they were like, "Oh, we're so glad you picked her." So they definitely found the perfect person, but I was able to kind of weigh in on that, which was great.
Awesome. Yeah, the audiobook process is really interesting, the way that it all comes about. Well, if we have no other questions, I want to thank you both again for being here tonight. Ellen, you were so sweet to get back to me so quickly about the opportunity to do this. And Tracey, you and your team have been really amazing. The back and forth emails and just making sure everything ran so smoothly. So, you know, I will be sending a thank you to your team, but I wanted you to know they've been amazing. They have your back 100%.
That's
Yeah,
how it feels. Thank you.
yeah, and
And
the
thank you,
cover-
Ellen.
Yes, thank
You're
you, Ellen. The
welcome.
cover is so beautiful. It's just the great book that kind of like eye-grabbing without being too busy. It's just that kind of excellent blend. They've done a really great job for you. So
Yes.
hopefully, either with your next title or when this one comes out in paperback, we can have you in the store.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. Hopefully, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
fingers crossed about a lot of things right
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
this will be up on YouTube. If anyone you know would like to watch it later, please check our website for the YouTube link. And again, I just want to remind everyone that we have events coming up all throughout August and for the rest of the year. We've got a really full calendar. We really appreciate everyone's support of Roundabout, both in events and just coming by the store and, you know, keeping us afloat and in business. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Ladies, again, thank you so much. This was great. Loved the book. Cannot wait to see what comes next.
Thank you. And thank you so much for making this happen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You're
All
welcome.
right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Night.